Hi, Will. How you doing?
Very good, very good. It's a blowy day out there. We've got Eunice with us, but yeah, I'm doing very well. I'm nice and warm and inside.
Yeah, it's a good place to be, and yeah, it is very windy, as we were just saying. But as you say, we're indoors. We're batten down the hatches, as it were. But what a great excuse, and what a great, rather, opportunity to have some great wines. And we've got Roebuck here today. Rather special. One of your wines is rather special as well. But I think for those who aren't too familiar to the world of English sparkling wine, should we say, can you give a bit of a background on how the estate got going and also your journey as well?
So get me out of the way very quickly. I joined Roebuck Estates around a year ago, but that's still relatively new in the grand scheme of Roebuck Estates. My history is selling wine for everyone from very old established champagne houses to Burgundy houses to finest wines out of the New World. So I've had a great opportunity to try wines from around the world, and now I'm kind of back home and having watched the English wine kind of market develop over the past decade or so. It feels like a really good time to kind of join in, really, because the quality of wine is just so high. Which brings me to Roebuck Estates quite nicely. So Roebuck, although the wines are relatively new to market, yeah, as a producer, we've been going for a number of years. We were established back in 2013, established by two guys from Sussex who saw the potential and the quality of wines coming out of England, and they sought to kind of join in, and they've always been driven by quality of wine. They've had a love of fine wine, and so they wanted to find the best way of well, I just said, getting involved. So what they did was, back in the early 2000s, they started looking to establish themselves as a producer of English wine. And to kickstart the business, they actually purchased two mature vineyards that had been planted back in 2006 and 2007. So that's our home Roebuck vineyard, and another one called Roman Villa that I'm sure we'll talk about in good time. And then subsequently, we've gone on to identify and plant three more vineyards, because quality sparkling wine is all about the art of blending different parcels and different sites together. And so by looking to kind of obtain as much choice and quality as they can, we hope that we're in a position to start making really exceptional wines that can reflect the potential of wine in England, reflect the potential of our sites. Yeah, and so from there, we've gone on to hire kind of real expertise. There has been a real drive for quality from the very first beginnings. So our head of viticulture is a guy called Jake Wicks. He's worked from everywhere in Cote Roti to Margaret River, but then he spent a lot of time in England. So he's got a real understanding of the terroir of, English vineyards. So we're not kind of shoehorning a vineyard into some land that we like the look of. We're very much identifying parcels that we know have got great potential. And then it's down to Jake and his team to kind of go and make the most of it, really. So kind of building that all together, there is a lot of things that I'm sure we'll touch on as we go through, but it is all about making those quality choices along the way to make the very best grapes, to make the very best wine, and deliver it at the very best point for kind of ultimate enjoyment, really.
And do you think there's much room for expansion? Because you were talking there about getting different parcels and different bits of land, or where's Roebuck heading?
But at the moment, we've got our 5 vineyards. So as with any viticulture, you need time for your vineyards to mature, your vines to mature. With sparkling wine especially, your time from picking grapes to actually pouring from the bottle is longer, depending on the style you're going for. Our 3 wines we have at the moment, they've got a minimum of 3 years resting on lees. So a vineyard planted in 2013, 2014, those wines are only going to start to become available in the market. So I suppose what that means is at the moment we are very much with our early fruit, whereas in 2 or 3 years' time, the vines that we planted, they are starting to come on board. And are we limited to what we have now? Probably not. If the right vineyard site comes up, if it's going to add to our kind of palette of parcels, you know, we may well be interested if it's good enough. So a lot of the viticulture that that Jake and his team are involved in, it's very much precision viticulture. We are really learning as quickly as we can where the good parcels are. We've split our vineyards into over 70 parcels. We use this system called Sectormental that allows us to record the data, be it qualitative, be it disease pressures, be it soil types, soil health. All of these things are kind of pieced together to give us the best opportunity to get the best grapes through. I'm not sure if I answered that question. Hopefully, covered it and other things.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We've got a good overall picture. So let's dive into some wines. Where would you like to start?
Probably the best is to go with our kind of the flagship of our range, which is the classic Cuvée. So this is our classic Cuvée from 2014. This, kind of to put it kind of broadly, this was our first real commercial release.
So can you, before we dive straight into the actual because it's got quite a bit of age on it. It's just a lot of people have released, well, not too young, but this is, so we said 2014, was that right? Yeah. So for a classic Cuvée, that's quite a bit of time. And I mean, when did it first come to the market?
So back in 2019, we released a very small amount of 2013, which was our first year. I think you start a project, you want to make it wine in your first year, but it was tiny. So 2014 really was our first commercial sized vintage. We made about 25,000 bottles. From the off, we wanted to make sure our wines had the opportunity and the time to develop into a style that we were really happy with. So this has a minimum of 36 months on lees.
Okay.
We then applied dosage, and then realistically it's 12 plus months under cork, because we want to release the wines at the point where we feel they're ready to drink, and also that they're kind of demonstrating their potential. So 2014, just to kind of cycle backwards a little bit, it was a great vintage across England. There weren't really any highs or lows. There weren't any extremes. It wasn't frost pressure like we saw last year. There wasn't disease pressures really that we saw last year. The vintage didn't accelerate at the end, so there wasn't a rush to bring in fruit. Allowed complexity to build up in the grapes, and so we've ended up with a really great starting point for Roebuck Estates. This has got a blend of 47% Chardonnay, 38% Pinot Noir, and the balance, which I always forget, but I shouldn't be lazy, which is 15% Pinot Meunier. And then we are doing a small proportion barrel fermentation, which we feel again adds some mouthfeel and complexity when you're trying the wine. And as I was saying, this is our flagship cuvee. This is the one that we will be making whenever the vintage allows. This will stay. This is a kind of stalwart of our range. And what we are trying to do with this wine, and I think all of our wines, is just to really have that balance, elegance, and a kind of real depth of flavour and character. Sorry, I'm getting straight into tasting.
No, it's fine. I was just noticing that on the aromas, it's very soft and smooth. It's not too aggressive, which is nice because you don't want to have to be too out there and too bold. It's nice to have some delicacy in the aromas.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think having that extra time just soft. It rounds it out, but it still has got that real backbone and balance of acidity there.
I think what I picked up immediately was it's much more like baked fruit, cooked fruit. So it's instead of having a bite of a fresh green apple, it's more stewed, it's tamer, and that's all part of the aging that you're talking about, because it's been able to calm down on a lot of the citrus elements.
Yeah, I think often you find with English sparkling that green apple profile is quite prominent. Where this is going towards, you're right, is that kind of that baked side of things. It's a slightly richer style than you often might find. There are kind of brioche notes. Sometimes people say a hint of truffle. I'm not,
I think it's definitely more on the apple crumble. That's what I got. I mean,
yes,
I think it's really sums it up completely, because you've got the texture, you've got sweetness, you've got the edge to it, the crisp acidity. It's lovely.
Thank you very much. So we released this back in 2019, the back end of 2019, and then 2020 being the year that it was, we were kind of really humbled and kind of delighted when this picked up the Decanter World Wine Awards Best in Show trophy. So it was a platinum medal, and then they award, I think, 50 Best in Shows out of the 16,500 wines. And that, in a market where it was very hard to go out and taste with people and shout about ourselves, it immediately elevated our profile and kind of brought a lot of awareness to us. I wasn't there at the time, but I know I've heard that the team were suddenly kind of shaken out of their kind of COVID kind of how are we doing into a wow, we're really being we're heading in the right direction. I think a lot of hard work got them to that point, and then you launch at a point when you can't make a plan really. So this is a wine that I was talking to you earlier, that I see a lot of sommeliers. I'm out and seeing fine dining restaurants, and this surprises and delights kind of hard-nosed fans of sparkling wine from other regions, and recognize, and it helps them realize, what we're capable of, really.
I do think it's I think it will improve with a bit more bottle age, because there's still quite a punch of acidity and a lot of the citrus as well. And I think that will calm down with a bit further aging. But it's lovely. Yeah, I really want to. I think this is a great food pairing wine. It's something I talk about a lot. But from simple starter type dishes, so like pate on toast, or even actually like a parsnip and butternut squash soup, the texture that soup would balance perfectly with this crisp freshness, and then the citrus coming through. yeah, this would be great for food, this one. But it's also, I mean, I've said this enough, but the freshness, this makes it very drinkable. It's a wine that you want to enjoy, you want to keep drinking. It's not a boring wine, if you see what I mean. And I think that is due to the citrus, due to, excuse me, also the freshness that's there. It's like your palate has become alive, if you see what I mean.
I think all of our wines, and you know, hopefully you'll see, it is having that complexity and depth to the profile. You know, I can attest that this is a fabulous wine to sit on a terrace on a sunny day and have with nothing more than, you know, a smile on your face. But
absolutely,
you know, it's. I mean, I was going to say a day very unlike today, but you're right. It pairs so well with kind of any kind of appetizers, or it just has that potential to kind of carry through the meal. And I know it's always a risk to talk about food pairing when a lot of sparkling wine is just sat and drunk and enjoyed. But when it does have that potential and ability to match with things, I think you're right. It's that drinkability. It's like, do you want just one glass, or do you want to just do you want to keep going? And I think I like to keep going.
I'm with you there. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's why I said it. And this wine does it displays that, it draws you in, and I do think that's because of the lovely citrus elements. It's this zingingness on the tongue, lovely finish, crispness, fresh. You know, we'll keep using these same words, and that's what makes it. And also, it's part of I think a defining style for English sparkling wines is the freshness. And this wine has lots of it. It really does.
I think you picked up on it at the beginning. It's a 2014 vintage. The fact that it's still got so much brightness left in it, I think, is testament to the balance of the acidity, but what we're capable of doing. So yeah, thank you. Yeah. And
remind me, how long was it on the lees for?
So it's minimum 36 months on lees.
Okay.
It was about 8 to 10% barrel fermentation. What else do we need to know on the winemaking front? Dosage, for those that are interested, is about 7 grams a litre. Yeah, I mean, we try not to overcomplicate it.
No, that's fine. I can see why, as you were saying, that the sommeliers are enjoying it, because it's a very good wine. A great way to introduce to Roebuck as well.
Well, thank you. So, do you want to move on to the Rosé? Great. Let me find it. Oh, here we go.
So is this? So we've got here the Rosé de Noirs. Was this part of original release as well, or did you guys just start with the sparkling white?
So we just started with the classic Cuvée.
Mm-hmm.
I think we then moved to the Blanc de Noirs middle of 2020, and then the Rosé came out towards the end of 2020.
So this is your most current wine? Would that be the correct way of putting it? Or
I mean, it's most recent release,
yeah.
I suppose. I think in time, we will kind of move through the cuvées as and when they're ready. So this was about 12,000 bottles. The Blanc de Noirs, when we get to it, was a similar volume. I suspect we'll move on rosés before the Blanc de Noirs, partly because of how popular rosé sparkling wine is, but also the Blanc de Noirs, which we'll see when we get to it. When talking about kind of aging potential, that's probably the one which is going to be drinking the best in many years to come.
Okay.
So our rosé, this almost could be considered a single vineyard wine. This is from it's 100% Pinot Noir. Well, it's Pinot Noir from our Roman Villa vineyard, which, as you would expect, is next to a Roman villa, which I think the road between Chichester and London is kind of awash with Roman remains. So, although impressive for me from South London, I think you go down towards the South Downs and Sussex, it holds less cash. But it's a vineyard that's entirely planted with Pinot Noir. It's about 13 acres. Our home vineyard, the Roebuck vineyard, which I'll talk a little bit about more in a bit, is about 3 kilometres north of the South Downs. The Roman Villa vineyard, we've got about 2 or 3 fields between us and the foot of the South Downs. And the South Downs, especially where we are, acts as this amazing weather barrier. So over the growing season, the worst of the weather will come in off the kind of from the southwest over the sea, and the South Downs will block the worst of it. I've been told, I've yet to see it, we can sit in our vineyards and watch the rain falling on the South Downs while we're in our deck chairs. I've never seen deck chairs, and I've never been sitting around in the sun, but you know, in time. But so where our Roman Villa vineyard is, there is a really nice kind of breeze that comes through. So you think about 2021 as a vintage, there was a lot of it was very wet. Some people had real disease pressures. Where we were, we have this breeze that comes through that helps to really dry out the vines, which again gives us an opportunity to kind of up the quality of the fruit that we're actually able to take off the vines and put in wine.
You leave them on the vines a little longer then, so you don't get too much risk, or rather there's potentially a reduced risk of rot, etc. If you've got the wind washing through.
I mean, because of the breeze, we have that, flexibility.
Yeah.
The other point over having a number of different vineyard sites, and then within that, we could get into kind of clonal selection and rootstocks, and we've got all of these different parcels. We've split all of our vineyards into, I think there's 70 in total, but it means that when it comes to picking, we're not faced with a situation where everything is ripening at exactly the same time, which either means you've got to have a workforce of hundreds, which is unrealistic, or you are forced to pick things at a less optimal moment. By having all of these different parcels and in quite different locations, it allows us to kind of extend that kind of harvest period, and we can choose to pick at exactly, or as close to as exactly the right moment as we can. So it just means that the guys who've worked the vineyards all vintage, they don't have to watch their grapes come in at a moment that if they'd been given a few more days, or they'd come off a couple of days earlier, it would have really hit potential. And I think that's, really kind of the takeaway message, is that we're just so driven to have the highest quality fruit picked at optimum ripeness.
So it's the control element for you. It's the ability to make the decisions immediately from owning the vineyards, therefore being in the vineyards constantly, and you can gauge, now's the time to pick, we'll go pick.
Exactly. And it was, I think the vineyard team kind of look over at me. I don't know if they hope I'm going to do more work over harvest. I think they welcome that I came and helped out, but probably didn't get in the way. I think is probably the balance that we're talking. But watching them, they're out in the vineyards doing grape samples, checking sugar levels, checking ripeness, and that will obviously dictate where we send the picking teams. And then when we're picking, it's all about making sure you're getting the fruit from the vineyard to the winery in optimum conditions. So we're using small picking crates. We're doing fruit selection in the vineyard, so we'll drop bunches if the quality is not good enough. The teams that we have working the vineyards are obviously super well kind of drilled in what they're doing. I made the mistake of offering to do a row with a couple people, and I had to unfortunately leave to go on to something else, which was a delicious lunch, and they had to pull the team back to finish my row off because I couldn't pick at the same rate as everyone else, because I didn't want to put any grapes that got rejected into my crates. But it's really good. And on a personal level, I've been lucky enough to, in the past, travel to different wine growing regions around the world. But I've always kind of gone at a point where it's a nice time of year to visit and to entertain people. Going to the same vineyards over the course of a growing season, and also seeing what the teams are doing in the vineyards, it's incredible. It's it kind of reignites that kind of joy of wine from the very beginning all the way through to the bottle. Sorry, I digressed. So this was a Roman Villa vineyard. So I suppose the thing to note about it is 2016, it was quite a small vintage. It was quite slow to get going, but then once it was, the quality of the fruit was really high. It was a long Indian summer, and we ended up having really beautifully ripe grapes that were really quite fruit forward. So for us, it was a natural rosé vintage. If you look at the color of it, it's almost kind of like a rose gold color, and the way we're getting the color is we are adding Pinot Precoce, which is an early ripening Pinot Noir at dosage. So
you blend then, is that right, rather than extracting direct from the original pressing?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is kind of an unashamedly joyful, playful. I mean, it's a rosé. We're not trying to kind of create anything that's too serious. I think actually, if you look at with the lees aging, the barrel fermentation, it's still got that nice kind of mouthfeel, complexity, layers of flavour, but that kind of just splash of early Pinot just elevates it with this kind of red fruit character. Apparently, as a still red wine, it's very much kind of like an Alsatian Pinot, or it's kind of Gamay-esque. So that when you're just kind of putting a little bit into the base wine, it really comes forward. And I think it follows through on the palate as well. But it's still got that kind of backbone of acidity that we had with the classic Cuvée.
Absolutely, and it's something I talk about a lot with sparkling wine is balance, as we have said, and this is a good example of that. The acidity is well matched to the fruit characteristics, and it's got a lovely softness as well. I mean, I think it really helps that it's serving at only a fraction below room temperature, actually, which helps to retain and draw out much more fruit rather than just having it cold, because then I think the acidity would be far too obvious. But yeah, lovely red berries as you'd expect. It's very soft, smooth, and very Moorish as well. It really is.
yeah, a number of people have kind of identified this as something to kind of have with a very kind of traditional afternoon tea, having with a couple of sandwiches and then follow through with a little strawberry tart. I think it's got that ability to kind of match that. I mean, I think I'd steer away from the kind of slightly more serious pairings that you'd have with the classic Cuvée and definitely the Blanc de Noirs. But yeah, it's definitely one to enjoy.
Absolutely, and I think some lovely fresh red fruits. You know, keep it really simple and really easy, and it's just a nice, pleasurable wine to drink. And I think those little balances are adding, or rather would add, to the enjoyment of it. Yeah, really easygoing, nice wine.
Thank you very much. Where to next?
Right, so next.
If we were to describe it as a family, someone once said that this was like the brooding older brother.
The Blanc de Noir?
Which I think is a bit the Blanc de Noir, sorry, yes. Which I think...
It's a serious wine, probably, is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, I think that's what I would say. It's a serious wine. As a younger brother that's desperate to be taken seriously, I don't like the idea of a brooding older brother. But you know, being a Blanc de Noir, it's 100% Pinot Noir. You've got that structure. It's kind of more concentrated. It's richer. And we're talking about sommeliers. This is definitely the one that they kind of, you know, eyes light up as something a bit more serious and gives them the opportunity to kind of really introduce a style that people aren't familiar with, but kind of then talk about the complexities and talk about food pairing opportunities and whatnot.
It's a lot more on the nose.
So this one,
it's a lot more developed immediately.
Yeah. So 15 was, I think it was a small vintage. It wasn't a particularly, I think it was a more challenging vintage. I think it took a lot longer to get going. And I think it was just slower overall, which the quality of the fruit that came off was much, I think what was there was very high quality, but it was very concentrated, and it had much higher acidity as well. I think touching on the cellaring potential, this by far is the one that, even in the year that I've been at, you know, with Roebuck, it is opening it up. It is opening up. It's really starting to show its kind of real true character. I think one of the interesting things, and depending on kind of how much detail you want to get into, the color is definitely erring towards that slightly more coppery golden, you know, coppery color within our Roman Villa vineyard. And this could, you know, could be described, I mean, it is a single vineyard wine. We've got a mixture of Champenois and Burgundian clones for Pinot. The Champenois berries are bigger because, you know, they're avoiding skin contact and they don't want to really extract any color. Whereas obviously Burgundy clones, smaller berries, you know, there's more kind of natural color transfer during pressing. So immediately when you line them up, this is a kind of richer color of wine. And I think kind of on the nose, it's, you know, it's more developed, it's riper. I think you could probably pick up the kind of the Pinot side of that kind of Pinot richness.
It's still very fresh. Still retain the crispness, which is important, I think, for our sparkling wines, particularly to make a very good food pairing wine.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that I think we played around a lot more with. I mean, it can go from anything from, kind of like richer, kind of nuttier cheeses. You know, you do Comté, like an aged Comté or something. But then kind of meaty seafood. Someone said goose at Christmas.
I can see how we go. A fattier bird. I can see that.
Yeah, you know, it's got that acid profile to cut through that. Yeah, I think this for me is it's the one cuvee we actually have at the moment in Magnum, and arguably Magnums are just the perfect vessel for aging sparkling wine in.
I was just about to say, so have you released the Magnum, or is it still on the lees in the Magnum?
No, the Magnums have been released, so
Okay.
they came out. I'm not quite sure about the timescale, but I think they came out after the cuvee. But they are ready to go. And obviously, you join a new wine company, and then my 3 sons' birthdays are all in about 2 months of me joining the company. So there was an expectation of sparkling wine and an expectation of Magnums. So the wider family can attest that it tastes delicious in Magnums. There was a lot of us, and it was at a point where you could start mingling again. So it was good fun.
So a Magnum was in order.
A Magnum in order, on order, absolutely. But I think you're going back to the Roman Villa Vineyard. I'm just trying to think. It was the second vineyard I was shown around, and Jake, who's our head of viticulture, he was talking through the kind of what we are doing in the vineyards, kind of regarding sustainability and how that kind of leads to increased biodiversity. And in our other vineyards, we've got these beautiful pockets of woodland. The margins are all kind of left to go wild. We're really promoting everything we can to improve biodiversity. And I was in the Roman Villa Vineyard, and we saw a couple of big birds of prey kind of circling above. And I was like, oh, so what do we kind of have here? Because Little Brockhurst in the middle, we have this beautiful bluebell kind of woodland. And old Jake could say to me, it's like, oh, we've got a 3-legged hare, or it was an old hare with a limp, which I suppose is an indicator of sorts. I'm not quite sure what it indicates. But, I'm pleased it's a suitably homely place for a 3-legged hare.
Hawks.
But hawks. Well, I think it was a big hare, and we don't have big enough hawks, I guess. But this is me shoehorning in our sustainability credentials, and we were founding members of the Wine GB sustainability scheme, which is I think it's a really good thing. I don't know how much you've kind of delved into it, but I think it's really promoting sustainable vineyard practices, and it's kind of, you've got to hit a benchmark, but then you're committing to continuous improvement, and just, I think you recognize that you're custodians of your vineyards.
Of the land around you and the wider picture, because it's all of the environment coming together. So
absolutely.
3 wonderful wines. Thank you so much for sending them through. Can you, just to sum up, tell us a little bit more about the future plans for Roebuck?
The Roebuck Estates. Well, I think where we are at the moment is, it is a real drive to understand our vineyards and produce the very, very best grapes and wines that we can. I think what the future holds is that understanding. We are going to learn more and more about how to look after our vines, how to make the most out of them, but then also how very specific parcels can improve and where the quality is coming from. So it's just giving us this, you know, palette of choices to blend beautiful wines, and we want to sit amongst, you know, the best sparkling wines in the world. I think England has the potential. I think there's a lot of amazing wine being made out there to be as good as anyone's, and we want to rub shoulders with those people. And you know, will there be new cuvées? I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there's things, you know, sitting quietly in the cellar somewhere ready to come out. And in time, as our vineyards mature, we'll have more choices, and you know, hopefully you'll see a lot more of us.
Do you think those more choices will include any stills?
At the moment, I would say no. I would also say never say never, because I don't want to jump around or commit to anything. I sound like a politician, but I think for us, you know, we want to get sparkling right, and we want to do the very best that we can. I think still wines, there is clearly massive potential, and there's some amazing still wines being made. I think we're in such a marginal climate, you know, having that consistent quality and just all consistent kind of release of wines would make kind of still wines a challenge that could draw away focus from what we want to do with sparkling at the moment. So let's wait and see. But I think sparkling is us for the moment.
I think that's very wise. It's something you've talked a lot about, which is focus. And if Roebuck Estates is so far doing so well with English sparkling wine, which you clearly are, it's, yeah, why change paths? You know, just keep on keeping on in that sense, and keep raising the quality, raising the bar, and improving the fruit and improving the wines. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what will come over the next few years.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, Will, thank you so much for putting some time aside and having this conversation, and most importantly, sending through the wines and the tasting. Thanks, Will.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.